Okay, welcome to Bite Size. Today we're going to be looking at decaling, or decalling, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Okay, basically decalling, or decaling as I call it, is just the process of putting water slide transfers, or the details, okay, onto your model. Okay, first thing down. The surface that you're going to put your decals onto is the most important thing you can do, okay? If it's a nice glossy finish, you should have very, very little problems. Even if it's got raised details in it and things like that, it should hunker down quite nicely onto that. Purely because you've got less chance of air getting caught underneath the decal itself and the surface you're putting it on. It's that air gap that causes something we call silvering. Now, silvering is just the nightmare scenario. It basically looks like a silver area. It's just the air being caught between the surface where the decal cannot physically lay flat onto the surface of it. The way to look at it is thinking about, would you decal over sandpaper? Purely not, because what's going to happen is that, you know, the air is going to be under it, you know it's going to be horrible. Think of it that way when you're going over your model. So if you've got flat paint, especially, it's going to have a real difficult time to do it. And all too often, decaling can be avoided by just the surface. Now, easy way to do that, give it a gloss coat. So a quick gloss coat. You've got a couple of options. Just brush paint where it is. So if you're just doing on a rondel or something else like that on there, but obviously you can just do gloss that area, let it dry for 12, 24 hours, something else like that, then do your actual your decaling onto it. Or give it a quick gloss coat with something like an acrylic, like a clear, okay, or whichever one you like. My personal favourite is the Mr. Colour GX100. That stuff's absolutely beautiful. Or you could go through 2-pack options and all the rest of it like that. But basically, make sure it is fine. Also, make sure it's completely dried. Sometimes you can actually get sort of watermarks and tide marks around decals. A lot of that is setting solutions eating into the surface of the paint or the clear coat, which can cause that as well. So save yourself a lot of trouble and hassle and straight away off the bat by getting good preparation in. Good preparation means you should have very, very straightforward decaling as you make your way through. Okay, so what you're going to need. Ideally, you want some type of setting solution. There's 2 flavors out there. Singles, which is like Mr. Set Neo, okay? This is just a one-off product. I tend to put a couple of drops into the water where I'm actually putting the decal into soak, all right? The enzymes then will attack or basically eat the decal a little bit. Just makes it a little bit more elasticity into it, less chance of it actually tearing, okay? Because it's a little bit stretchy. It's already then starting to sort of soften the decal a little bit, which makes it easier to put it down. Basically, you brush this on, and we'll show you with this one, onto the model first. You put your decal on top of it, you rub it away, and you're good to go with it. The other ones are what we call like the 2 set ones. So basically, you've got the set one down in here with Micro Industries, which is my favorite one. This works exactly the same as this one. You pop it down first. The difference is afterwards you've got Sol, which is basically a setting solution, which actually then when the decal is down and it's adhered, you brush it over, it really welds it down. It's like a second bite at the cherry. It pushes it right down, gets into the actual recessed details, into those panel lines, into riveting detail, and goes through. They basically work just the same, just different ways of doing it. This does it all in one. This one is like a 2-fold system to it, okay? And again, it's one of those things. Up here I have got lots. I've got the Ajima one that's incredibly strong and it will eat decals alive, but it's great for very thick decals like Tamiya, so you can brush it over, it will weld it on. Again, it's a single action one. You just brush it on the top of the decal and let it eat its way in and it's good to go. And again, there's lots of manufacturers who do different strength ones right the way through to, if you wanted to, you could use Tamiya X20A, which is their acrylic thinners, and just brush it on your decal afterwards and you'll notice that will adhere and weld it down as well. So it's a quick, cheap way of doing it. If you are using that way, just remember, if you've got an acrylic coat of paint down, you are brushing on acrylic thinners, so it could actually soften or even melt or eat into the actual paintwork on the surface. So just be aware of that one. These ones tend to be mild acids, which is the way that they actually do it. The water, just put your finger in it. Okay, you want it to be basically body temperature. That's the ideal temperature you want it. You don't want it too hot. If it's too hot, you can actually stretch the decal. So if you've got a long decal, what can happen is it physically goes out of shape. Okay, if you've got something with lots of wording on it and things like that, and it's on a clear carrier film, it can go out of shape and distort, purely because the water's so hot, it allows it to stretch, and it's very difficult to get on. Same thing, you don't want it too cold. So what happens is if it's too cold, it actually can shatter the decals because some of the decal is still attached to the paper, other areas have come off, and because it's doing it at different rates, it can actually crack the decal and shatter it and cause lots of problems. The actual paper on this swells slightly and it can actually crack your decal. So warm water helps it. And I said before, I always put a drop of micro set in there, and in this case I put in, it's why it looks a little bit milky colour down in here, that in there, just to help get that going right off the bat. So it's really straightforward for me. What I tend to do is just take the part, pop it into the actual water, push it underneath, and we go face down. The reason for going face down is it doesn't curl up. It slightly curls in here, but it stops it from immediately rolling up on itself. If you put it in upside down, it will roll up itself. That way it can also cause cracking and stuff like that. We literally let it soak in there, and I've got a couple of others because we're going to do some clear ones all at the same time. So we're just going to pop these other ones down in here just like that. Okay, we let them sit in there. Now depending on the decal will be depending on the time in here. All right, basically the way you can do, if you look at it, you will notice that actually the carrier film on the back is all got like white in here at the moment. It will all just go the darker color once it's absorbed right the way through. At this point you could get a plastic bag, and I've seen people put it onto bags or onto different areas. You can use something like if I clean this off because it's covered in dust, one of these, and you can pop it in and see what's going on, all the rest of it. To be honest, I usually just use my cutting mat, it's fine on there, but if you wanted to, you can put it on a separate surface just to know where it is. So what I tend to do, once it's been floating in here just for a little while, not for too long, I take them out and then I put them face down, on their back, down on here, then I get a little bit of water and we just prep around the area. So it's just got a little flooded areas just down in here, so we just put plenty of water, and then we're just going to grab these other ones and we're just going to sit them on the water so they are soaking right the way through. So they just sit on here and carry on. The great thing about putting them down like this is that if they're in there, they can detach and they'll be floating off wherever you don't want them. Okay, by keeping them here they stay localized and they'll stay on your paper. So you're just making sure they've got water on the surface, so just look at it, making sure they are semi-submerged just on here. Okay, and you just keep it like that. All right, now these ones, to be honest, they're quite bitey on the paper. They can take a few minutes just to come off, but it gives you a chance to have a look. So what you want to do, just have a look. We just move those out of the way. You want to have a look at your instructions and just get your idea about how things are going to go. So what we're going to be doing is putting these three on. So we've got the rondels just going to sit down in here. We've actually got then its registration, and we've got the one on the rudder at the back here as well. What we're doing is working out where it's going to go. So we can see there's a small gap between this area to the fabric area. We can see that the bullseye is just slightly over the top of the actual, that rib coming through the middle section, and then that rib is almost our guideline for seeing where K6140 goes right the way through to the tailplane at the rear. And then we can see up here that the K and the 6 and everything is in between the ribbing on the back, so that gives you an idea of where it's going to go. There's nothing worse when you place it on and you can't quite see how it's going to happen. So whilst that's all soaking, familiarize yourself, and we can see we're going to be coming in here. Okay, then we've got the other one's going to be coming down on here. We haven't got the tailplane on, so we're just going to have to be a little bit aware that obviously we need to pop the tailplane on in a moment, but we want to get this decal on first. But the easiest way to look at it is that the 40 is going to be in this access panel sort of area at the back. Over on here you can see we're going to be going in the ribbing. It shouldn't be a problem. All right, so what we're going to do now, wet your finger first, okay, and then we're just going to move, and you can see that the decal is now free of the backing papers. You can see they're moving around, but we're going to leave them on there just for a second. So for this one we're going to use the micro Neo setter. Okay, so we'll start with the bullseye first. So we just take a bit of this and it's in here, so we put a bit on them because we're a nice smooth surface. This is moving around, but it's not a problem. So we're just going to sit that on like that, and then doing this one-handed on something like this can be a bit difficult. So what I'm going to do is slightly push it off to the edge. We're going to place it down and we're just going to roll it in. So that is on here now, just like this. So what we're going to do, checking the reference, seeing where that bullseye is and all the rest of it, we're just going to place that where we think it is. Now, we've got a tiny little gap there. We've got a small area, and over it is going over quite a, you know, this door action at the back. So we can see it's somewhat like that. And we can see it's there. I'm just going to pull it forward just a smidging. Actually, I think I'm going to go back a bit. I think we're just about up just a fraction just there. So then what we're going to do, take our cotton bud and we're going to roll it out. So what we're going to do, start in the middle, and we're going to roll towards the back. Okay, and a bit like rolling out all your papers and your various things. And we're just going to roll it. Now, we've got this raised edge on here, so what we're going to do is rolling right over from all the directions, and then the enzymes are being attacked, as said, on this rondel, so it should soften. So we're just rolling it right the way over from all the different directions, and then hopefully you can see how well it's attaching in there. You catch it in the light there on the close-up, just showing it in there, and it's sitting in there very, very nice right the way across. Okay, so happy of how that one's gone in. So then what we're going to do, we're going to reload with our solution again, and we know we got the K6. I'm just going to pop it right the way across, and then again we're just going to grab this, and normally you wouldn't have to have it showing in the camera like I've got, and you could probably pop this down or something, but I don't have that luxury, and obviously I've got to be careful that you don't put your finger in the old rondel. So what we're going to do, we're looking along, so the one is going to go right next to the door. Okay, so we're sort of squaring, centering. I think the bottom of the K just seems to be right on top. Okay, that actually doesn't look too bad. So we're just gonna tiniest bit more. So the leading edge of the 4 is up against the door, just like that. That's actually not too bad. So again, exactly as before, rolling. Okay, and then back and forth. And again, making sure you've got everything out. Okay, right the way up, just like that. Okay, and again, no silvering coming through. Okay, last up is the one on the rudder, so we're just going to grab a bit more up on the rudder. I'm going to grab this guy. Okay, and then we know he's quite a good one because he's just going to sit up in here, so we're just seeing how close he is to the edge. And to be honest, I haven't glued this rudder on, so it's going to be a little bit finicky. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to take this off purely because when we put pressure on to move him, he's going to slip. Okay, so I'm happy with how that is. So again, we're just going to come across, get all of that out, and then he's on there like that. Then we can just come in and pop him in, and there he is. That's our system all in there and done. And then underneath you can see we've done these other ones. So that's on there literally just like that. And then you can see over here, these ones have gone on very, very nicely, adhered down. These are dry in there, no problem at all. Now you can overcoat these once they're totally dry. Again, I would give them a good couple of hours to totally dry off, and then but you can overcoat it. So you can go over it with another coat of gloss, you can go over it with a satin or a flat, right the way over and go through. Big thing, if you notice silvering, okay, so the silvering is caused by that air that's got under there. That's when you can come in with a secondary one, like, as I say, the Micro Sol, okay, like we said about using X20A. I would, if you got one, a riveting wheel right the way over it and then put it in. You will notice it will go in, go underneath, will absorb. Hopefully the air is being released, and as it dries, it will then pull itself down, forcing the air out, which will give you a nice film. You can obviously just use a knife, a nice sharp blade, always go in one direction. Don't go up and down and across because you'll cut the decal, it will fall apart. But if you go one direction right the way across it, let the setting solutions get in underneath, and away you go with those. One thing to remember though, if you're using the single action ones, a bit like using the Mr. Neo setter, or if you're using like a Jima's or single ones, don't leave them on the surface. So if you brush them on the surface of your decal, if you leave a bead of it on there, it will attack and it will make what we call basically a crater, okay, or a wart on your actual decal itself, so it can physically melt it. These ones are designed to be wiped off, not to be left on the surface. These little guys here can be, okay, the ones, the setting solutions, X20A on the surface, things like that, they can go on there. Once it's been on and it is totally dried, also what I recommend is literally just get a cloth. So we've got a cloth down in here, we can just grab a little bit of water like we've done on here, and what you can do is just take away the film. So any solution that is then just dried now on the surface of the actual decal or on the actual area around it, you can just wipe it all away, so that way you've got no residue on those, which then can obviously affect your colours and your various things as you make your way through. So there we go, that's it. Simple decaling, bite size.